All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the third Drakenfest ref stream. I am your host once again. My name is Mel, she, her pronouns, and I am a Shadow Camp player who has the absolute pleasure of chatting with this lovely panel of refs today. So we're going to go around and do a quick introduction to kind of get to know who everybody is, where they are in camp, and kind of what they do around. So let's start with, I'm going to go in the same order I did last time and start up to my left. Elise, you can go first.
Hi, yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Elise. I am a Blue Camp lead ref this year, and my pronouns are she, they.
Thank you. We'll go in this direction, so to Argon.
Hi, I'm Argon. I'm the ref recruitment team lead, and I'm also the lead ref in the bazaar.
Excellent. And down across, Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm one of the assistant head refs, so I don't have a camp. I sort of wander around and help all of them as they need something. And pronouns are she, her.
Excellent. And finally, Justin.
I'm Justin. I am the Bard Guild lead, which makes me the in-game ref representative in this little panel.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So if anyone hasn't seen one of these streams before, this is kind of to so you can get to know a little bit about what refs are doing at the game, what it's like to be a ref at Drakenfest. This particular stream, we're going to be talking about some really cool stories that the refs have from previous years that they've been working at Drakenfest. I feel like a lot of us hear a lot of player stories as we're going around. It's really easy to get in contact with your friends and be like, hey, what cool thing did you do? But you don't get to hear what goes on the back end. So I think it's really interesting to hear what the refs experience while they're at game. So that's kind of what the theme of tonight's going to be. Per usual, at the end, I will offer a little bit of a Q&A. So if you have questions for the refs at the end of it pertaining to anything you hear, save them for the last like 10 minutes of stream and we'll get to as many as we can. But we are going to start off with a story from Catherine, I believe, about Green Camp. Yes?
Yes. So in a nutshell, the piece I really liked was a giant game of yes and. But the plot team came up with this idea that each camp was going to be given a plant that went in their herb garden and they could feed it. And as long as they took care of it and they didn't ignore it and they nourished it, it would eventually give them a dragon egg, which was amazing, and I was looking forward to it. Green Camp, um, on Saturday morning, walked out and saw this little green seed, and the herbalists got very excited and very confused because it was sitting in the volcanic section, effectively. So it's this sort of dry, dusty death area of the world, and truly embracing the pack mentality and things of that nature. They decided to open a vein and start feeding this little seed some blood, which meant that they got to feel a little woozy, but it started to pulse, which is part of the narration that they're getting from me as they're doing this thing that was not what I was expecting but loved. Um, so the person who did it fainted a little while, but she was fine. And then the next round of feeding happened sort of 3-4 hours later. And at that point, they actually cut off a body part. They cut off some fingers and fed them because it had gotten a little bigger. And repeated the situation, a little more drastic loss of fingers for a while. So the herbalist was very upset because they couldn't harvest anything for a little bit. And then eventually they had a character die in a battle with a different camp, but their heart was stolen, so they had to go to Shadow Camp to get the heart because that was the next thing they were feeding it. And they just kept upping their game as it got bigger, because it started as a seed and then it had eventually had vines wrapped up. And the part I truly enjoyed, the best aspect of giving them the effects of what was going on and playing off of what they were doing and really making sure that they had a truly wonderful time, was we had a player who unfortunately Saturday night got hurt, or Friday night got hurt and had to go home. Like, she found a hole in the ground. It was a thing. And the camp as a whole decided, well, if she's gonna go, we're gonna make it worth it. We're not gonna let her leave on a low note. So they chose in the last bit to do a ritual and sacrifice her to this plant as a final feeding. So when they woke up the next morning, they had Audrey too. It was fully formed. It had tendrils. People would walk by. It started growling at them and making noises. Um, they did get the dragon egg out of it, but they also brought it back. So if you watch like the Green Camp promo video for this year, there's this giant plant in the background because they've just built Audrey 2 at this point every year. But it was a lot of fun to watch them and engage with it and make the experience just a little bit more immersive and more entertaining for them, and just see exactly how far they were going to push that slide down a bloodthirsty mountain. And they did it.
So cool because I feel like as refs there's a huge bit of the yes and that you guys are doing is just making sure that everyone is, when they come with these wild plots, and I definitely had a few of my own last year. But when you come with these wild plots, there's a big part of like, okay, how can we make this happen in a way that makes sense for the game? And I think especially with that story, what I absolutely loved was a player who had what could have been a very unfortunate end to the game that year that could have left it with a really bad memory. You turned it into something cool. It was the let's give you an exit that is going to leave a lasting impact on this camp and on this part of the game. And I think that that is something that refs are so uniquely in a position to be able to facilitate more than anybody else, because y'all are the people that can say, yes, you can do this. Let's find a way to make this really cool for you. And I think that's part of what I appreciate a lot about what the refs do is you make our plots come real. And I think that's so fun. And I think it's really cool thinking about the out of game that goes into making sure that someone is having a really fantastic time and pushing their plots forward. And I think, Justin, you had something that kind of fit along that vein of just working to make someone have a really cool experience.
Yeah, so as an in-game ref, I'm in character most of the time, and a lot of people I interact with don't even know that I'm a ref most of the time. And we, you know, one of the best things we do sometimes is just the little things, just the validation. So we had someone come to the Bard Guild tent, and they wanted to be a bard, but they said, "I don't play a musical instrument." And we were, "Well, what you perform, right? Any performance can be a bard." He said, "Well, I spin poi." And we said, "Okay, well, show us. Show us your poi skills." And he was great. He was amazing. Just I would have nailed myself in the face a dozen times. Um, and so, he finished and we clapped and we cheered and we wrote him a little writ, saying that he was a Bard member in good standing, and sent him on his way. And he just kind of perked up, like he came in feeling like maybe he didn't belong here. And then he walked away looking like, I do belong here. And I saw him a little while later in the bazaar spinning poi with an audience, and it felt really good.
And I love that because it's still the vein of like turning something that someone isn't sure about into something really cool. And I know there's like I personally last year was my first Drakenfest. It was my first LARP ever. I've been told a number of times that that's diving in head first, but why not? But the first day after game on, I definitely was wandering around my camp just looking completely lost. With no real idea where to go. I knew the kind of gameplay I wanted to engage with, and I had one of the Shadow Camp refs come right up to me and say, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I told her, and she said, "Cool, I'm off shift in 10 minutes, and I want to do the same kind of gameplay with my character. So if you give me 10 minutes, let me help facilitate this for you." And it's that kind of vibe where a lot of people, I think, don't realize how much the refs are able to do to facilitate some kind of gameplay that will give you a really cool experience. I got super involved in a plot that I had no intention of being involved in with the moon last year. I know it was mentioned on the first stream that there was a person in Shadow Camp doing a moon heist. Hi, I am she. um, so I did not intend to be that involved, and it sounds like you were able to facilitate something very similar for this player who wasn't sure, knew what kind of gameplay they wanted to do, but didn't know how to get involved. So it's really cool that all of you are able to kind of say, okay, yes, how do we make this happen? How do we make you have a good time? And I think that's something really important that players understand that you're able to do for them. And on the topic of really cool things that y'all have been able to facilitate for players, Ellie, I want to hear about your Green Camp story.
Yeah, sure. So this is from my first year of reffing, the second year of Drakenfest. And at that time, I was stationed in Shadow Camp. I was their night shift ref, so I started in the evening and worked all the way until 1 a.m. And one night at around, oh man, 12:30, like very close to when I would close for the day, I had a group of witches come up and asked me to help facilitate a revenge plot for them. These witches had recently that day gotten into a bit of a kerfuffle with a Green Camp member who had worked to free their familiar from them, and they were pissed. But they didn't know how to do in game what the kind of revenge that they had like been hoping for. It was late. They wanted something big to happen in the morning, but they didn't know how to make that happen because, as you know, it can be hard to track people down, especially at night. Sometimes people are asleep. You can't always talk to them out of game. You know, hey, can we do this? So what we did instead is I collaborated with them. I worked with them to figure out the kind of revenge they wanted to do. They had a couple fake prop tongues, and together we decided that this unfortunate Green Camp member was going to wake up in the morning with an extra tongue in his mouth and a tongue each over each eye. And because they were a rat worshipping group of witches, that he was also going to feel rats running up and down his body. They gave me this information. I helped supervise the ritual where they sent that curse his way. And then I hopped on my walkie-talkie. I called in plot and I called in Green Camp. And for the next half an hour until my shift was done, we worked on getting Green Camp the tongues, on talking through with plot and getting the okay that what we were doing was above board, and talking with the Green Camp ref on duty to make sure that when that green player awoke the next morning, that ref could find them and say, hey, this is what happens to your character when you wake up. I heard later that the Green Camp player had a really fun time role playing, running around and screaming early in the morning at Green Camp, and the witches had to have that moment of satisfaction that the gameplay that they wanted to do had actually occurred and that they hadn't really had to do anything out of their way to make it happen. So that was a really satisfying experience for me.
And I think it's so cool that you were able to facilitate that overnight because that's a lot of time when people are like, there's not much going on gameplay wise. But I know for me, with the aforementioned plot that I was doing, there was a point where I was in Blue Camp until 1:30 in the morning, working on something with the people I was doing my little heist with and the Silver Dragon and waiting for him to get to Blue Camp. So it's really interesting to hear about things that are happening kind of when people don't think there's any gameplay happening. Um, Catherine, I want to know if you have anything to say about this because you are very invested in this story, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I want to know what you have to say about this story.
I'd like to thank Ellie for making me hold tongues for many hours overnight. Those were gross because they were very well made and very cold and slimy, and it was. And you just walked in and handed them to me. This is disgusting. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, in the morning it went really,
You're
really
so
well.
good.
But I think most of us suffer from insomnia, which is these things happen at 1 in the morning. But Yeah, we had an explanation of what was going on, and he rolled with it and made it much bigger than it had to. Like, could have been. He could have just woken up and completely grossed himself out, but instead he ran around screaming at everybody else that he was now being attacked by things and growing tongues. I did have to say the phrase, "You can't lick the tongue." That was weird.
I think "you can't lick the tongue" is my favorite phrase that I've heard in regards to that story. I think that is just hilarious. And it's so good to hear people taking it in stride too, because you're right, waking up and being told, "Hi, you're growing tongues," could be a very odd thing for a player to wake up with and be like, how do I handle this? What do I do with this?" So it's great to I'm sorry, the comments in chat are killing me. I It's great to hear when people are able to kind of take that in stride and just run with it, especially
Yeah.
with all of the work that you put in overnight to facilitate this, really truly not knowing what the reaction would be when this player woke up.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that's
oh, sorry, I was gonna say, and of course it's all like, opt in. He didn't have to do that, but it's really cool that he did, and it gave the witches such a satisfying, I think, conclusion and also continuation. They got to bicker back and forth after that. So
we
good
love
stuff.
the we love the continuing interactions too. It's so fun when something gets to carry through days or even years. It's so cool to hear that things like Audrey too is still there. It's so cool to hear when things are carrying. And it's again just circling back, really great to hear that this player kind of took that in stride, because I feel like there are situations that y'all have to deal with where maybe the reaction wasn't quite as good or quite as nice, that you then have to manage in an in-game way that still makes it fun for everybody. And I'm going to throw it back to Justin for a story about that, actually, because I do think this is really important for players to hear how back end things are facilitated when maybe it looks like things aren't going quite so nicely.
So the big sort of thing event that the Bard Guild plans is we have the Dragon Egg competition. And last year we did the Dragon Egg competition a little differently, and so it took the whole event, and we gave out the thing on Friday. Um, and we had a winner, and they were from Shadow Camp, and we granted them the egg, and they left. And on the road, they got attacked by a Red Camp, and the egg got taken. And in game, this is kind of like winning the Grammy and then getting mugged in the parking lot. Um, so it, it rubbed some people the wrong way, and the bards really felt kind of offended. But when you're dealing with the rumor that Red Camp took the egg, there's no face to put to that, right? It's not a personal thing. It becomes this wall of Red Camp is the problem, and people respond to it like that, and that's not a productive or fun way to engage with the game. So I said to the bards who were particularly fired up and wanted to, not offer classes to Red Camp and such, and they were getting kind of worked up. I'll handle this, don't worry. And I walked down to Red Camp and I negotiated with their general and arranged for the Bard Guild winner to have a Red Camp warrior be their bodyguard for the final battle. Um, and they got someone to do that, and it seemed like they had a really great time role playing these two people that would not have interacted otherwise. They got to have this moment, this experience, and it made it a more of a personal one-on-one thing, not this group against group kind of engagement.
And I think that was such a cool way to handle that, because as I mentioned at the start of the stream, I'm a player in Shadow Camp. And last year, after a number of things that had happened even leading up to the Bard competition, there was a lot of tension between Shadow and Red Camp. There was some communication breakdown that led to a siege that shouldn't have happened, and there were some feelings about how that siege went and how it was handled and that kind of thing. And progressively, I feel like through the week, the tensions with Red Camp had escalated a little bit. And that was what you heard when you were in camp. And so when it was just everyone kind of spreading around, Red Camp stole our egg, those tensions obviously rise. And then it's up to you guys to kind of help simmer that a little bit. And I think handling it in such a way that was like, okay, yes, the rule is they can take this. That is not an out of game thing that is not okay for them to do. That was you can get mugged on the road at Drakenfest. It happens to a lot of people, especially if you're wandering around at night. That is a common thing to happen. So I think handling it in such a way of, well, okay, we can't tell them to give it back because it wasn't rule breaking, it wasn't game breaking. We can't revert that. But let's figure out a way that is fun for you still to still engage with the game. Let's find a resolution that is still going to feel okay with everybody else. And I think that's a great example of and taking the out of game, kind of where out of game tensions are going, because that's what it felt like. Was it felt like the tensions were escalating beyond game, and being able to go, hey, let's make everybody feel good about where this is going. And I think you did a really good job of that. Do you feel like that's like the kind of feedback that you got, that you feel everybody was pretty happy with that resolution?
I heard no negative feedback, and I know that the Bard Guild competition winner and the bodyguard both had a great time with it. So
Good. And that's the important bit, is when you're able to facilitate something that's going to be fun for people and helps kind of dissolve any like poor out of game feelings that people are having. Cuz it's we're all there to have fun. We're all there to play a game. The game is a competition at the end of the day. And there's going to be feelings associated with that if it's not turning out the way that you're hoping it to. And I think it's really awesome the way that you were able to handle that and able to give them something that they can play off of and still have just genuinely a really good time. I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of a little bit more of how players are interacting with refs in an out of game sort of context, because you guys do hear from players about things that are happening during game but have an impact out of game. And Elise, you have a really cool story about that. It's actually one of my favorite stories that y'all showed me.
Thank you so much. And it's true, like a lot of the times, as a ref, you're working on in-game stuff, but you do get to become friends with and also just hear things about the personal lives of people happening in camp. So one of my favorite stories is that in my second year of refing at Shadow Camp, um, I was working night shift again, and a couple walks up to me who I had, briefly talked to out of game before. And they walk up to me, and um, one of them shows me a ring on their finger and said, I just got proposed to. So they had actually been my second year in a row of seeing a proposal. The first year was actually another staff member. This is my first time having a player come out of game just to check in and share the fact that they had gotten engaged in game, which was so sweet and so cool. And I got to take pictures of the ring and share it to the staff Discord for everyone to sort of, clap and cheer over. And I just thought it was so sweet that they had thought to share that with me, even though we hadn't really talked so much out of game at that time. And I think it just goes to show that, like, refing can really create a lot of cool bonds. Even just beyond that, like in my time of refing, I have made so many friends that I see outside of Drakenfest. Um, and these relationships do mean so much to me. So I think that's one of the really cool things about refing, is that it does bring you closer to other people. Even as someone who doesn't play, I am what I call a forever ref, where I only ref during Drakenfest. I don't play the game. Um, but even then, I find that Drakenfest is still so fun and so worth it for me. Even if it seems like I'm only just working, because I'm not just working, I'm building relationships, I'm getting to know people, and I'm getting to see so many cool and lovely things, both in game and out of game.
And I think that's a really important point to kind of put out there for anyone who's watching who might be considering reffing or something like that. Um, that reffing isn't just work. You have the option to play. Not everybody does. You're not the only ref that I've met who doesn't play. There's a few that I know who just don't have a character. They just ref, and when they're off shift, they rest, they rehydrate, and then they go back in and keep reffing. And that's a really fun way to get to be a part of the game because you get to be a part of like all of these out of character moments. You get to facilitate stories and that kind of thing. So I think it's really kind of important for anyone who's watching who may be like, well, I don't know what reffing is like, that kind of thing. Being able to talk about like how you still have a really good time even when you're just reffing. I'm never gonna say just reffing because y'all do so much for all of us. It's actually wild. So I'm never gonna say just reffing. That yellow hat is a huge part of the game. So, but you still get to have a good time. You still get to have a Drakenfest that feels good for you and exciting for you. And I think talking about making those bonds is really important because I've made friends who are on the ref team, some of my closest friends, including the one who got me involved in the game last year. She's one of my closest friends now. So it's you make a lot of bonds and connections and things. I want to see if anyone wants to add to that particularly before we move on to the next story because I think that's a really important point to touch on if anyone has anything they'd like to add to that before we move along. I know I'm putting y'all on the spot with that one, but I think it's an important one to talk about.
It's a huge piece of this because the people who do this job legitimately, we care about making other people happy and have fun. So we genuinely care about the people. I've made a couple of lifelong friends at this point, and in two cases discovered that it's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but it's actually the degrees of Drakenfest. As we connected on social media, and I'm like, how did we not do this? Because I know the other people you were already talking to. What happened here? Um, but yeah, it's a huge piece of what we do, and it's worth it in every way.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
mean, I just wanted to add that there are a lot of things that we that players share with us, right? Like we often see players at their best, but we also see them at their worst. Like if a player is having like a really bad time, like the last couple of years have been really hot, right? Like there are a lot of people who don't emotionally deal with weather like that very well, and it puts them in a state of mind that like they're more vulnerable. So when there are things that happen not only behind the scenes but like behind closed doors, for example, that like one of the things that we do is if a player is having that kind of experience, they trust us enough to come to us with that vulnerability and basically say, "Hey, help! Can you help?" They don't necessarily want us to fix it. Sometimes that's what they want, but like they just want something. Often they don't necessarily know what that is. And that is one of the most valuable experiences for me because those people are often the people who, like also care enough the most about the rest of their community. So there's this give and take as a ref where you have to give enough to the players in the community and the environment, but you also get that back in the emotions that you get to both feel and that you get to soothe. So those just all of the types of connections that we get to see as refs, and the things the depth of connection happens so quickly because we're in this environment and because we are in like a position of trust for all of these players, which I just think is beautiful.
so I wanted to add, as an in-game ref, um, you know, I've LARPed for a long time, and I'm used to having a team, but they're all my friends before we started. As a bard lead, we have people sign up and join, and I meet new people from all over the country that join my team, and I'm working with, for the entire event. And I've also heard the analogy that if the avatars and seconds are the camp parents, the guild leads are the preschool teachers. um, and in that way we develop that this relationship with people from all the camps. And there's people from different camps that in this role I've met, and they stay in touch with me through the year, talk about their plans for what they want to do musically and entertainment wise. And it's a pretty cool thing where I'm not just in this little circle of my friends doing this thing, but my circle's growing constantly.
I love that. Thank you all for sharing that. Because I think it's so important for people to hear all of the things that are important to you as refs, and so important to hear that there is so much more to that role than what we as players see, because we see you so briefly most of the time, and we see you running around and working and that kind of thing. So hearing all of these things that are important that aren't just that are really cool. Um, I do like talking about the out of character stuff, but I also like talking about like the stuff that's out of game that overlaps with the in game. So like the facilitating and creating cool plots and cool things for players to do. And Argon, we haven't heard a lot from you yet, and I think you have a cool story about doing something like this for some Blue Camp players.
Yeah, yeah. So, I am obviously I am the Bazaar lead. So this story being about Blue Camp players, might immediately sound kind of like, huh? So, last year was ridiculously hot, and the final battle got moved from what it was supposed to be at noon to way later in the evening. It gets to be about 2 o'clock, and like all of the refs are going off duty. We're all like, getting food, and me being, kind of like my role in the bazaar is to check on all of the guild leads, and make sure they have the support that they need. So I was, going around making sure that they had gotten, water, got a chance to go rest, whatever. And I was looking for the Magic Guild lead. Couldn't find him, come around the corner, and I see that, he's talking to a group of Blue Camp players. Now, mind you, this man has not had a moment's rest the entire event. Like, he's on from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and he's in character, and he's tired, and I can tell that he's hot. He needs to go rest, he needs to go get food, but he's trying to work with these players. And so I just kind of like stepped in and kind of read the situation for a little bit. And I kind of like whispered to him. I was like, hey, do you want me to take this over, like, so you can go eat? Like, I'm good. I can handle this if you want me to. And he was like, yeah, that would be great. Like that. Thank you so much. So he goes off, and so I start talking to these players. A couple of them I'm familiar with because of other things that I do. And it turns out they want to run this ritual, right? It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. There are supposed to be no things happening, no greater ritual circle things, no like flag, no egg stuff, nothing. And I'm listening to them, and I'm thinking in my mind, if there's a way that I can redirect this back to the camp ritual circle, then maybe we can make it happen. So I'm listening to what they want to do, and ultimately it was this like all event long build up of something that had happened at the beginning of the close to the beginning of the event. And they were given something by one of the other Magic Guild leads, Archmage Vesdar. So they wanted to basically like give back to this Archmage, and basically re-empower his heart magically, and they wanted to give it back to him, so that he could maybe slow down the progression of what was ever happening to him. And I was like, you know what, that sounds great, but I think that is fine to be done at the blue ritual circle, because that actually sounds more like something that is directly involved with blue anyway. So they're like, oh yeah, that's great. So I start walking, I start kind of directing them back there, and they were like, well, we'd love to go to do this at the Blue Camp Ritual Circle, but we don't have any refs in camp right now. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because all refs are off right now. Huh. So I got on my radio and I asked the other two bizarre refs, who were just kind of hanging out in the tent. I was like, "Hey, can you handle this? You know, I'm gonna go. I want to go down to Blue to help them do this ritual." And they were like, "Yep, go ahead, no problem." You know, and so I was like, "All right." So off we go, walking down to Blue Camp, and I use the walk to kind of talk to each one of them and learn what exactly they're trying to do. So some of the aspects of Blue Camp, for a little bit of context, is like greed and like you know, like accumulating wealth and freedom and all this kind of stuff. So these people are talking and they're like, I want to give up X. I want to give up Y. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is going like contrary to all of your characters right now. So you know, they all have an item or something like something tangible that they want to give up. There was a character whose life is like measured by an hourglass, and if the hourglass runs out, he dies. And he gave like he let the hourglass physically run for part of the ritual to just be like, I'm giving up 100 years of my life. And so, but everybody had something emotional like that. They all had some emotional thing and attachment to this thing that they're bringing to the ritual. And like, I'm already getting like choked up hearing what they're saying as they're going around the ritual circle, you know, like pouring their hearts out. And like, when I tell you, like, this was just like raw emotion, there were no special effects. There were no like, there are no smoke bombs. There's no flashing lights. It's in the middle of the day, you know, and so they're doing this with nothing but like a few props and raw emotion. And I was like, I gotta give them something. So I start narrating just a little bit at first, and I start narrating what's happening as they put these pieces into, you know, like the into the center of the ritual circle, and like the reactions that these players gave were like a DM's dream. Like they had authentic, fully, like full body authentic reactions to everything that I said. And of course, you know, I mean, I'm like, all right, well, if you're going to play it up, I'm going to play it up. You know, and so I gave them more and more and more. And like by the end of this ritual, at least two of them were crying. One of them was like on the ground hyperventilating, like, and like they're all still in character, right? Like they're not breaking character, they're still in character. And they just kind of like took all of this, and I basically in character said, like, as you finish the last incantation, the heart of Archmage Vesnar pulses, you know, a bright glow, and it vanishes. And it you can feel the power thrumming in a far away, being transported back to where it's supposed to be. So ultimately, like the ritual is successful, but you know, I harp on the details because those types of things, like it's not the only reason why I ref, but man, is it a big one. Those feelings, those seeing what players are bringing into, you know, what they want to do, you know, and the emotion that they put into it, because ultimately, like, that's what this game is. It's about emotions. You know, we can talk about like there's no like min maxing, there's no stats to increase. It's about the stories that you have. It's about it's what they make you feel, right? That's what you're going to remember. You're not going to remember how much gold you had. You're going to remember what the story made you feel. And those, like, that was by where Dan Comstock has a sort of a measuring stick for like, did you have a good time at Drachenfest? And his answer is, did you have an epic 5 minutes? And in that scenario, that was my epic 5 minutes, you know, and I think it was the epic 5 minutes for all 13 of those players. So that was just it. That's the story. I you know, I took the heart back up to Archmage Vesnar and you know, told him what was going on, and his reaction actually told me that they were playing to lift. they gave all of these things up genuinely so that they could give him his power back. So they wanted to like thank him for something that he did not even that year, the prior year. So they not only gave all of this emotion, into this story and this you know circumstance that they had, but they also used it to lift another player who was actually an in-game ref. So that whole ordeal to me was just the highlight of my Drachenfest last year.
That is such a cool story. I love play to lift in general as a concept, and hearing that someone was doing that for someone who is an in-game ref who had given so much of their time and so much of themselves to be able to facilitate what players were doing, that's huge. And the epic 5 minutes, I love that as a measurement. That is the first time I've heard that, and I love that as a measurement because it makes you think about your own, what your were your epic 5 minutes. And mine, I remember being in court at Silver Camp defending the Shadow Avatar against the accusation of stealing the moon last year, and being in that space and helping with that, and all of the facilitation that would have gone into that, because we had people from Green Camp on the one side and Shadow on the other, and then Silver overseeing, and someone from the companions being the judge, and just that kind of coordination. And again, the play to lift of like, let's make this a really cool final scene. And I think that's huge. And I think thinking on the epic 5 minutes, I think we've got one more story that was a pretty insane epic thing that happened last year that I think Argon and Catherine can speak about. And if you were at Drachenfest last year, you will know exactly what this is.
Yeah. Because he and I had the opposite ends of this thing. So do you want to do the end or do you want me to do the build up first for the context?
Well, do the build up first, and then I'll pick up when we hit when you radioed me.
Okay. So it was Argon has mentioned it was hot. Players they wanted to fight something. Like Blue Camp came to the conclusion that they wanted to fight something. They didn't care why. They didn't necessarily want a flag. They just really wanted to fight things. This is when I discovered they have siege pizza. This is important in my world now. So they had traveled to all of the camps, like slowly showing up, and they'd show up, and they showed up at Red Camp, and they're like, "Hey, can we do this?" And they're like, "No," because our fighters are off doing something else. And they show up at Silver Camp, and they're like, "We have like 9 people right now. They're all doing other things. Can't do that." So they get to Green Camp, and they're talking to Green Camp, and Green Camp is sort of trying to figure out, like, do we want to have a fight? Do we not want to have a fight? And in the process, I end up over there in the head ref section instead of in Red Camp, which is where I was stationed. And I end up talking to a couple of the Blue Camp players and one of the Green Camp. I'm like, what is it you want to do? Like, what is your goal here? Because we've established you're not getting a flag out of this. Like, you just want to like hit people? Is this DF Fight Club? What are we doing? And effectively, they're like, yeah, we really, really want to fight something. We haven't had a lot of combat because the weather's been bad. Green camps are really our last option. I mean, we'd be willing to like fight the orcs or the companions might be down. And I'm like, okay, well, let's find out. So I hop on a radio and get a hold of the bazaar and explain that these are the two options that could potentially exist, and wait for Argon to tell me whether they're going to attack orcs or companion mercenaries.
So I get this call, and this is sort of like baffling to me because like combat doesn't happen in the bazaar, like it just doesn't. And so I'm like, well, I am a companion, and I know what their answer would be. Their answer is yes. So I just go knock on my door to home, and I'm like, hey, Logain, do you want to fight Blue Camp? And they were like, uh, yeah. Let's go. How many do they have? And I was like, all of them. And he was like, I mean, what's in it for us? And I was like, you get to fight people. And he's like, fair enough. All right. Give me like 2 minutes and I'm gonna armor up. And so like he like rallies everybody, gets everybody out there. And so I radio Catherine back and I'm like, all right, yep, the companions are down, like, get on up here and stuff. And no sooner did I have that out of my mouth than do I hear behind me one of my like the second in command, her name is Katla, of the companions, and she's like screaming like Blue Camp is sieging the bazaar, and I was like, oh no, oh no. And so like then there's like three of them. There's like three other people like going through the streets like telling everyone, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna see what happens. I'm just gonna see what happens. And like we had people coming out of the woodworks. Like we had people who were running like trading posts and be like grabbing weapons and being like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And there's just like, and so by the time Blue Camp gets to the bazaar, there's like, I don't know, 150 people just like waiting for them. The orcs have not gotten together yet because it usually takes them an hour to get in kit. So like, but there's like 150 people all from the bazaar. Like there was a couple of people from the camps who had showed who were up in the bazaar who had like filtered down and were like on the side of the road just like, I'm gonna eat some popcorn. And then there was like, then I don't really remember exactly like when something started, but like they formed battle lines. And I was like, Catherine.
Because Green Camp has joined them. Silver Camp fighters realized what was happening and went, yeah, we'll do that. Red Camp people who were there were like, well, we can do this thing. And while he's having this moment of chaos, one of the members of Blue Camp has tear down the hill, is screaming while running to Blue Camp that Blue Camp is attacking the companions. Their diplomat has just finished negotiating a contract with the companions for the final battle. So they're now losing every ounce of their mind. And as they're screaming this running down the hill, the red avatar, who's supposed to be going up there for tea in a little while, happens to hop on the back of a golf cart, raise a scythe over his head, and start screaming to the companions as they drive off up the hill. I'm like, this is just a fight. That we're not sieging nothing. Like, there's no flags or eggs involved in the chaos. But okay. And then the broth hall released their large monster crock pot. And Blue Camp just got rolled. But ultimately, it was a series of Argon and I being like, that's a bold choice. Yeah, how do we help the players do this thing and make sure that while they're all hot and sweaty and really frustrated because they haven't gotten to hit anything, like, how do we communicate and get this to happen? And from what I can tell, aside from the fallout of diplomatic chaos, everybody had a lot of fun.
It was the most talked about thing for the rest of the game. The Blue Siege of Bazaar. Like everyone who participated or saw that, like especially if they were like had been to more than one Drachenfest, they are going to remember that forever because it was so like it was so chaotic, but it was also so like random. It just came out of nowhere. Like there was a like, all right, well, I guess the entire bazaar is like arming up, and just watching all of that happen, and watching like all of these people in character get like indignant, like of course I'm a member of the bazaar, of course I'm going to get indignant about it being attacked, like seeing that was just that side of it for me was so cool. Just watching a place that is normally like a place of trade and learning turn into an army like that, man, that was so epic.
And it was, you are not kidding me, it was the most talked about thing because I was coming around through the bazaar and down the hill as this was finishing with no concept of what was going on because that was the day I was going from camp to camp doing my plot things. No concept. And I got stopped by someone I know from Shadow Camp, who actually heads up the faction I'm a part of. And he just goes, I need you to go back and tell everybody that Blue just sieged the bazaar. I need you to go back and tell everyone in Shadow that Blue just sieged the bazaar. And I'm like, just getting that with no context of go back to Shadow and tell every single person you see on the way that this just happened. It was absolutely wild and so cool to see something that you two facilitated just rapidly spread through the not just a camp, not just the bazaar, but the entire game.
They basically decided they were going to do their own final battle, kind of.
I love it. I love it. It's Final Battle Light. We're gonna do Final Battle Light is what we're gonna do this afternoon.
And the part that amused me was when they were picking between the orcs and the companions. It was, well, the orcs need an hour to get ready, and that's a lot of time. But the companions have a hard stop. Like, you can only fight them for so long because they have to have tea with the avatars. So I was like, all right, you're on a timetable. And they were down for it, but it was really, really nice because with everything that had been happening, it was a great way to just see everybody's mood shift into a really positive place with a huge adrenaline rush.
Yeah,
And I think it
that
helped
was
things over for sure.
Yeah, I think that helped, just everybody's morale, for everybody was really like beat down because of the weather. They were, like disappointed because of the battle siestas, but like I think that battle, because there were people from like other factions that just kind of like joined in for funsies. And like, but you couldn't really tell who they were. It's just like, I'm gonna go do this. And some people like what waited on the sidelines, but like that was the thrill, like the excitement, that like a lot of people were hoping for that day. But meanwhile, like there's all right, well, we're not allowed to fight until 6 o'clock in 4 hours. And I think that, like you said, Catherine, the adrenaline rush and just like, oh hey, something is happening on a large scale, not just like onesie twosie, kind of things on the large scale, because everybody loves to see that. Everybody loves the big epic battles. They love, I mean, the large monster, like I think that was the debut of the crockpot
Wagwa.
monster. Yep.
Yeah.
Uh and so just but seeing all of that, people just get fired up about it. So yeah, 100% agree.
That's why we do this. That right
Yeah.
there is why we
Yep.
do this.
Yep.
For sure.
And even as someone who is not like I don't play a super combat heavy game. It's just it wasn't my thing. I played in the final battle, I played in one siege, but I had way more fun doing like the sneaky kind of plot driven things that I was up to. Getting that message of this happened, tell everyone. It was just get as many people involved in this as you possibly can because this is a wild thing that just happened. I will say, I did put in the chat, if anyone has any questions for our ref panel, put them in the chat. We will do our best to answer them. We've got about 5 minutes left. I haven't seen any yet, so we can popcorn it. Is there anything that you guys would like to talk about your experiences as a ref that you would like to kind of leave people with?
I kind of want to leave people with, like the there are a lot of intangible benefits to being a ref, right? Like the stories that you're hearing today are just a tiny snippet of what we could fit into a 1 hour live stream. And if you at all enjoy making other people happy, there are a million opportunities to do so as a ref, and a lot of them are proactive. Like a lot of these things didn't happen, like for example, the story about, that Ellie shared about the revenge plot, right? Like of the witches trying to get revenge. Well, like she didn't say do a, don't she didn't tell them like give him tongues on his eyes. Like
she just, facilitated that, and so a lot of these things, you can also be a part of, and you can be a part of it, literally just by being there and checking in with your players. That's literally all we're doing, to be able to be part of these stories and be able to be a part of the driving force. Well, I won't say driving, I'll say guiding force, because the players are the ones in the in the driver's seat. We're just kind of giving them a little bit of direction on where they need to go. But like that, it's those little things that seem like, to us, they might seem little, but it was the spark that they needed to go for it. So, if there's one thing you take away from this, is that being a ref being a ref will absolutely make you happy, because you will see joy and emotion in other people, that you will not see it in any other context. Like, you just, the level of emotion and joy that you see in this game as a ref it's not, there's no comparison.
Honestly, I think that sums it up.
So I wanted to add, I've started out in 2023 as a camp player. I was in Green Camp. And then in 2024, I was a Bard Guild player in a bazaar. And then this past year, I stepped up to be a guild lead. And having worn a number of different hats, um, you know, some of the best experiences that I had as a player had to do with interacting with refs and throwing something crazy at them and watching them just take it in stride and be like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Here's how we do that, and then them coming up pretty fluidly with, here's some steps to get that done, go out and do them. Um, that just took the game from, like, my first year, particularly, from I don't know what I'm doing to, all right, now I've got a checklist of stuff to do that got me into the game, got me experiencing it, and got me moving.
Love that.
That is fantastic. If nobody else has anything that they would like to add, we are coming up on time. So I will say, let's have everyone go around, remind everyone who you are. And then we can close out. So we can start with Elise.
Like I said, my name is Elise. You'll find me at Blue Camp this year, being the Blue lead ref. And I'm so excited to see everyone. And there's still time if you want to join the team, so you can always sign up. Gotta put that pitch in.
Amazing. Amazing. Argon.
I'm Argon. My pronouns are he, they, and I am the ref recruitment lead, and I'm also the Bazaar ref team lead. And yeah, sign up. We want you to be a ref for Drachenfest.
Excellent, excellent. Catherine.
So I'm Catherine. I'm one of the assistant head refs. So I'm primarily a cat herder and support for everybody else in Little Yellow Hats, which I love watching that family grow and would love to see more people in that group.
Amazing. And finally, Justin.
Justin, he, him, and I am the Bard Guild lead, and the in-game refing is a different thing, but it is also quite fun and enjoyable. And if it interests you, you should pursue that.
Amazing. And thank you all for being here and sharing your stories. I'm sure it is super fun for everyone in chat to listen to. I know I had a great time. And I think it's super important for everyone to have that little kind of peek behind the curtain of what the experience for the game is like for all of you, especially if they're thinking about joining the team and considering it. For me, I'm your resident player. I am a Shadow Camp player, second year this year. My name is Mel, pronoun she, her. And I'm just super thrilled that I got to do this again. So thank you all for having me. And I think with that, we will see you all next stream or at game. All right. Have a good day.